My first guest was elected to Congress in 2018 and is a member of the Small Business Committee. Prior to joining Congress, he was a small business owner, an entrepreneur, and a co-founder of a community bank. He had a bunch of McDonald's franchises as well. I'm eager to hear his perspectives on entrepreneurship and economic opportunity. Representative Hern, it's great to see you. And I'm going to say this is the first time in my career, and I've interviewed tens of thousands of people. My family, my origin story of my family is Bartlesville, Oklahoma. So, technically, you're my family's congressman, so it's great to be with you today, Kevin. Let me just ask you, when you think about that, I just mentioned the time that we're in, which, COVID time, and, everybody's been shoved online. What do you think the pieces are that we need to understand about the small business ecosystem and digital platforms today?
Well, I think what you're seeing, Steve, is a lot of things that many companies, I will use McDonald's as an example, many companies have sort of evolved over the last 5, 6, 7 years, got some of the bugs worked out early on. And I really feel for those small businesses that are having to accelerate this, taking a 5, 10-year horizon that they were looking at evolving to a digital platform and having to do this in 4, 5, 6 months, 90 days in order to stay valid and viable. Most of us have never heard of the 3 S's of commerce, and that's storage space, safety, and protocols. We hear a lot about data breaches and financial breaches, and also site design. So these are things that are really just incredibly important to the success of being online. And again, trying to do this in the midst of COVID and keeping your employees and your demand for your product, it's incredible stress on our companies.
Do you think, you're a member of the Small Business Committee, that there's a literacy among your members, about those safety and protocols that we need to have? Because, part of this is, I shop online all the time. I remember when that used to be a novel thing, but now people are doing. But the question is, do we have those safety and security protocols built into the degree we should?
We do, and it's somewhat in conflict. Maybe some big businesses, as we know, like Amazon and Facebook and eBay. eBay's been around a long time. Gave people who wanted to auction their things off a platform, and now there's so many others that have evolved and in their own right are businesses providing services. And it's interesting you mentioned about it used to be a novel concept. How many people have you talked to over the years that said, I'd never buy anything online, it's not safe? Well, now if you're buying a lot of things, they're online. So it's also changed not only the underlying businesses, it's changed the buyers, the consumers' ideas of, is it safe? And it has to be safe. And, I think what our big platforms are doing, again, the marketplaces on these various e-commerce sites are instrumental and paramount for the success of small business into the future.
Now, Congressman, you have written a piece for The Hill. It's a tough piece. I enjoyed it. But you basically talk about, eBay, Amazon, Google, Facebook, Yelp, these digital platforms that have become so vital for small businesses today. And you say the Democrats are trying to take them down, essentially. That they're. I would kind of note, just to be fair, the president has not been that kind to Amazon. But in that space, do you think that it is misplaced to have a fear of the, let's not call it a monopoly, but the oligopolistic power of a few platforms?
It is, and what's happened in a free society and the free market capitalism we have in this country, one that's so great, and while we shouldn't destroy it, there are a lot of different sites that are peeling off in this and allowing people and taking some business with them. Many would take MySpace back, who thought they were going to own the social media platform, and now they're irrelevant. I'm just a huge free market capitalist. I think that we have to be, we got to be careful, and that's what my op-ed really speaks to, is we got to be careful about denigrating people who have started in their back offices, in their garages, in their dorm rooms, and have evolved and have grown. There is a responsibility of those original owners and the shareholders and the boards of those companies to not be overzealous and be one-sided. And I think both Democrats and Republicans have taken both Google and Facebook to task, and others for taking down particular free speech ideas. So, it's a fine balance we walk. But what's also happening, we'll use Amazon as an example. Usually when you think about these capitalists that grow these companies to become very overbearing, they drive up costs. You go back to the early turn of the century, last century, where we had oil prices being controlled by Rockefeller and things being broken up. it's the reverse of that now. We're driving down costs. And so it's really kind of created a real conflict in Congress about what you're really working on and how you're going to challenge those very ideas of both growing and then being too big to not be challenged.
I'm interested, I know you're in Washington, but you get back to Tulsa a lot and also Bartlesville. And I'm interested, I interviewed the other day, just to throw out my thinking on this, two fascinating women. They're sisters, and during the government shutdown, they created a company called Furlough Cake. And they have been booming online with e-commerce, but they were doing this during another time of financial stress, went online, created this. They've recently opened a brick and mortar shop down near the National Harbor. So it's kind of like going against the trend. And they said, we're existing in both places. We've got this spot we've opened up. They opened in July this year, which I said, are you crazy? But they did. And I'm interested, when I think about Bartlesville and the streets I knew as a young guy growing up, a lot of them were shuttered and shut down, but some are coming back. And what are you seeing in Tulsa? What are some of the stories of businesses you've seen that have been able to navigate both the e-commerce space, but still maintain a presence in the life of Tulsans and Bartians?
Well, one of the things we know for sure, Steve, is the business community as we knew it pre-COVID is certainly going to look a lot different post-COVID. There are going to be restaurant businesses that were our favorites to go to that will no longer be in existence because e-commerce using technology will just not will not work for their business. The reverse of that's also true. Companies that were purely online are going to be able to take advantage of those vacuums and footprints and sort of these niche markets where somebody can walk in because they've been used to buying this online. They can come into a particular area and be able to touch it, feel it. There's still, it's one of these things that's a real fallacy in thinking that you can just take society because we're a very young consumer group all the way to folks that are getting up in their years and they're not going to transition. And I think that's where some of the more quick service restaurants, some others have done a great job in sort of doing everything, having dining rooms in restaurants, having takeout, having drive-through, having mobile order, mobile pay, having delivery. All of these, you can touch every aspect of the consumer base. And if you can do that, you're going to be winning as the economy continues to recover, and you're going to be in a great spot.
I'm sort of interested in the steps that Congress has taken to shore up companies, with the First CARES Act and on. One of your colleagues from Congress, Yvette Clarke, is going to come on and say, a lot of these resources went to big firms and big businesses. A lot of small businesses are still struggling, still need support, and this pandemic is not over. Where are you in that? Do we need to be doing more to stand by small businesses right now? We're not at the end of the tunnel of this. Where should Congress be? Where should we be supporting? Where should we not be supporting small businesses and their payrolls and all that?
Yeah, so listen, here's the thing. Whether you look at the constitutional idea of eminent domain, basically the government declared eminent domain on the revenues of businesses in America, and you're supposed to be getting just remuneration for that. If you look at those, 80% of the loans that were given out, over 5 million, so over 4 million of the loans were given to small businesses under $150,000. And those, by its very nature, are very small business. In Oklahoma, it was even a higher percentage than that. But when you look at the average workforce of 10 or 15 employees, that this is going to be something, and has been something, that keeps everybody employed, keeps them in their jobs and off of unemployment. But what's also important to note that there's still $135 billion that's sitting out there. That's been sitting out there since July. It's already been authorized and appropriated, sitting there ready to be put back out into the workforce, keeping businesses open, jobs open for employees to keep America moving forward. But we seem to not be able to want to get that done. This is something that doesn't have to have the HEROES Act, the HILS Act, or anything else. This would pass overwhelmingly. I doubt there would be anybody that would vote no on getting this $135 billion back out into the business community. So with that said, I think you're going to see the rules change on that. And they have been proposed to be shrunk down to 300 employees or less, and having losses of 25 to 50%. That really hasn't been finally negotiated. So really hard hit businesses, that still have a demand for their product, that can keep the jobs open and keep people employed.
So can I ask you, I would just get a point of clarification because, it does get kind of, murky when you're looking at all the contending legislation that's out there. You just said something very important. I want our audience to understand it. $135 billion package, it's already been authorized, it's already been appropriated, it's sitting there. So, and I assume the White House would sign off on it as well. So what technically is the barrier to that coming forward? Was it attached to the House bill? Was it attached somewhere? I'm sorry?
Politics.
Ah.
It's something that's very easy that they want to use as a sweetener, both sides as a sweetener to get something done. And meanwhile, the unfortunate part of this, and this is what's very frustrating for a freshman congressman like myself that's been in business for over 30 years, is that we shouldn't be playing politics with jobs in America. People are hurting. We can go talk about states and municipalities, but when it comes to individuals and jobs, we need to stop playing politics. And just for point of clarity, this is not a standalone $135 billion. This was part of the second tranche of money that went into the CARES Act that wasn't fully taken because many businesses in America weren't sure if they were going to be able to stay open anyway. And now we're seeing jobs continue to come back. This is an opportunity for them, those second round of small businesses, to go take that money to continue on moving toward the end of the year and into the first part of next year so they can keep people employed, as opposed to starting to lay people off because the demand is real soft in their business.
One of the fascinating things I like to do is to lurk in the corridors of eBay and Amazon and others and look at who has storefronts and what they put up there. I've also become familiar with, a company called GoDaddy, which is the largest internet registration firm in the country, has identified a lot of micro ventures. These are just one or two person companies, often what the CEO of GoDaddy would call side hustles, which have become primary hustles for people, finding e-commerce and space on business. And I'm just wondering, is that level of economic entrepreneurship recognized in any way in the halls of Congress? Do they know how robust and dynamic the creative sector is of people launching new micro ventures that could become considerable? Because if you look at the typical language and legislation, we think about small business. You look at large banks and small business loans; they're still pretty high up the ladder, and so this kind of micro business, micro venture, isn't even on the radar screen for some folks. So I'm just wondering how you look at it.
Yeah, Steve, I'm a person who started my first business in 1985 as a single person writing software when I was in college before I went to grad school at Georgia Tech. And so I was the person, I always said I was the chief cook and head bottle washer writing software. And so I'm a person that's lived every one of those, that evolution from 1 to over 1,000 employees in a business. And I can tell you, the simple answer to your question is no. Members in Congress don't understand that because, quite frankly, I would guess it's 95% of the folks in Congress have never created a single job in their life. And so if you haven't had that risk put on you, that notion of the American dream where you take an idea and you borrow money or you get friends to help you and you put that money down and you work and you become the person that signs both sides of the paycheck, and I've done that for 30 years. When you do that, you truly understand risk reward. And it's hard to explain that to somebody that's never experienced it. So I keep pounding away at that. My fellow members of Congress, I actually get a lot of folks come up to me on both sides of the aisle to talk to me about business, and I really appreciate that. I'm not denigrating toward the folks across the aisle or those folks even on my side of the aisle that have never created a job. And I think that's what makes it special, is that we have 435 ideas in the House, that we try to work together behind the cameras to get something done and keep the politics out of it. It's just right now it's an election year and it's crazy up there trying to get anything done.
Well, Representative Kevin Hern, it's terrific to be with you. Representative Kevin Hern represents, Tulsa, but also, the Bartlesville area where my family is originally from. It's a pleasure talking to you about small business and e-commerce platforms in America today. Thank you so much.
Steve, thanks for having me anytime.